We have Gwen Thomas, if you can wave. She is she wears many hats, but she's a college readiness specialist, and that's some of what she will be talking to you about tonight. And we have Kim Sabursky, if you could wave. And she's an online reading tutor. I know we have a lot of questions in the audience and the parents about these two topics. So Gwen, if you want to go ahead and tell the audience more about yourself and your book and anything you want to share.
Well, thank you for having me tonight. I am pleased to share with your audience about the work that I do surrounding college readiness. I started the journey about 10 years ago when my own son was on his way to college, and I started thinking about college a little more seriously as it relates to how I was going to pay for it. And so I think I had planted the seed already that I wanted him to be mindful that he needed to, be ready for scholarships and be prepared to, have a dossier of all the things that he did as far as community service and all the great things that he did as far as getting involved in things related to what he wanted to study. So I thought I did a good job laying that groundwork. And as it got closer, we had to get more serious. We were successful in helping him win $500,000 in scholarships. Now, let me preface that by saying these were not scholarship offers. So today you hear a lot of people say, oh, I got $1 million in scholarships. Those are offers. I'm talking about actual tangible scholarships that he took was $500,000. And so I share with families that short story. There's a long story behind it and there's a backstory, but that amount of money, the $500,000, paid for his undergrad degree at Morehouse College, his grad degree at Johns Hopkins, as well as study abroad to 30 countries. So people used to say, well, when is he in college? I said, well, he's in college when he's studying in Egypt and India and wherever. And so there were some unique things that I learned about how to make sure that if there's money on the table, not to send it back. And so sometimes, financial aid, you have to develop a great relationship with that department. And so while I had other people were having bad experiences, I was having great experiences with financial aid. And so the long story was, he was able to, matriculate all the way through to get his master's. The short story was, people were saying, well, can you help, my student? Can you help my student? Can you, we're in trouble or things like that. And so I started just having coffee with people at Panera Bread in West Bloomfield, Michigan. And it led to one person then, well, can I bring my girlfriend the next week? And then I started getting calls. I'm a friend of a friend. So I started having some promotions and things out in the community, and I got a couple of sponsors I called. And so long story short, we have now been doing this program. We started a nonprofit, official nonprofit. Maybe it's about 6 years ago now. We've had probably about 70 seminars across the globe, including 4 international cities. And we are now working with some of the programs like Gear Up and Trio, and with their students across the country, and is trying to work with as many colleges now. We're finally getting our feet wet with some of the local school districts, and they're now seeing that I'm not going away. I'm here to stay, and I'm helping and making a difference and seeing some impact. And then I wrote a book. I had a friend of mine who said, hey, when are you going to write the book? This was about 4 years ago. And I said, oh, I'm getting to it, and then she made an announcement at one of the seminars, and I left there with the order for 300 books. So I came back. I was living in DC. I moved to DC to get as close to the Department of Ed as I could, to learn the nuances of working with the Department of Ed and making sure that we're meeting the needs of the benchmarks of college readiness, both academically and financially. So anyway, came back to Michigan, been back here now for about a year and a half, and getting my feet wet, like I said, back in this territory again. Our goal is to make sure we reduce the amount of college debt for college students. So what's happening is so many first-time college students or first-generation college students are getting caught up in the college debt situation, and they don't know. All they know is, I'm going to college, I want to graduate. Well, we want to make sure that the same people that are fighting their way out of poverty to get to college, we don't want them to end up back in poverty because they have college debt. And so I do a series of programs. I work with students on writing, how to write their narrative. Who are they? Who are you amid coronavirus? Who are you? What's your story? What's your feeling? In your heart of hearts, what do you think? uh, who are you amid this whole racism issue and the paradigm shift regarding Black Lives Matter? And so I'm teaching students how to write their narrative. These are the questions that are going to be on future scholarship essays. And so I'm working with students now to get them prepared on what's likely to happen and what essays are likely to come down the pipe. I do a number of big programs during the year. One of my signature programs that I'm so proud of is called the Black Friday Scholarship Boot Camp. We have that program every year. It's always the day after Thanksgiving. And so while people are out shopping for Christmas gifts, our students are shopping for scholarships. And so we're trying to keep students in the black and not in the red. And so this year, we're going virtual and we're going global. So I'm excited because I've had people for a number of years says, "Oh, you need to bring that to our city. You need to." Well, now I am. So that's just a little bit about the work that I do. My book is entitled The Parent's Smart Guide to Sending Your Kids to College Without Going Broke. And it has about 300 scholarships from high school all the way to PhD. And when I say high school, I'm talking about private high schools where families want to say, well, I want to send my child to Cranbrook or Country Day. And I teach them about how to tap into scholarship dollars and foundation dollars. And I teach students about how to get involved in writing their PhD or being a candidate for research dollars and so forth.
Very, very impressive and very, very important mission. And we'll dive more into that. Thank you for sharing. And Kim, if you could tell us more about yourself, your teaching experience, your tutoring, your business, and why you started your tutoring business.
Okay.
I'll let you take the floor.
All right. I taught special education for 33 years, from kindergarten through sixth grade. I started out with students with severe multiple disabilities, students that had many rare syndromes, wheelchairs, which was actually a great experience to bring to the table when even, I have students that are able to do academics. So then I moved into, back in the olden days, was called level 2, kids that could do academics, but were more like 3, 4, 5 years behind academically. I was the first class to be included out in a regular school building. I actually started my career in a segregated building, and we did community-based learning. So it was a while ago. So yeah, we started inclusion, and then when I had the kids that were first being included but could do academics, I would collaborate with the teacher and modify the materials, modify the test. So if a child needed to answer with pictures, that type of thing, take out 2 choices instead of 4, but so they could at least participate and learn some of the material, as much of the material as they're capable of. And then I ended my career teaching kids that were 1 or 2 years behind, or even less. Absolutely loved it. Loved seeing the growth that they made. And I really learned a lot more about reading at that time, just collaborating with other teachers and consultants and things like that. And just really loved it, and decided I was retired for about a week. And I decided I needed something more to do. So, and because I've always loved to teach, so I started tutoring kids in reading in person. And I have a lot of students that have dyslexia and or just struggle in reading. Maybe they don't have that label, which is totally fine. And then, of course, I was kind of tossing around the idea of starting a business online, and then COVID hit. And so in one weekend, I took a class, learned how to teach online, and I've just kind of been word of mouth and started a website and trying to get my name out there. And so I've started a couple new kiddos this week. And just an example of, like I had a student whose parents said, well, I'm sure you don't teach handwriting. And I was like, my child just had a lot of occupational therapy over the years. And I'm like, well, actually, I've had a lot of experience with that. And so that's something that we'll work on. And it's possible to do it all virtually. Just have to try to make it fun.
Okay, awesome. A parent actually did have a question they asked in an earlier session, and maybe you could address that. So how do we support special education and special needs students when we're not in the classroom? Like, how are we doing that virtually now? Like, if you give a little bit of insight on that.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a concern with a lot of parents, and I mean, it's like I can address the reading, but I think I'm seeing a lot of what you talked about in one of your other webinars was this pods, things like that, where parents are getting together and trying to have groups. I'm seeing a lot more of that, so they can split the cost of a tutor and have a small group of kids, and I think we're going to have the option here to have our kids with IEPs go to school 4 days a week, possibly, even if the other kids aren't there that many days, Yeah, I would look at some homeschool groups and see what, advice they might offer, materials, curriculums, things that they use that parents could use at home.
Sorry, I'm on mute. Thank you for that. Okay, so I wanted to share a few statistics before we go on and like how this ties into each other. But basically, I noticed, and again, introducing myself, I introduced myself before, but my name is Maisha Williamson. I have been a college prep math, ACT, SAT tutor for the past 15 years. Some of the success I've had, about 90% of my students score in the top 10% on the ACT and SAT, and most of my students get full rides to colleges such as Emory, Columbia, Ohio State University, University of Michigan, and I'm very passionate, like Gwen is, to making sure that students don't have debt. But I'm just making sure that they academically are prepared, and the decision they make from there is their own. But I've been noticing that reading and comprehension is like very important. And even with older students and high school students, they didn't master the basics early on, and that trickles down to when they're older. And I'm trying to teach them to catch up, and it's very hard to teach a high schooler to catch up when they didn't master the basics early on, or they were just passed through. So sometimes these students may have gotten okay grades in elementary school, but they didn't really master reading, phonics, things like that. So these are some statistics I wanted to share. In a study of nearly 1,300 urban students, researchers found that 82% of sixth graders who failed an English class did not go on to graduate from high school. Another 6% of those students who had failed English in sixth grade graduated late, while only 12% of those sixth graders who failed an English course went on to graduate high school at all. So basically, in a study of urban students, only 12% of the students who failed an English class went on to graduate. So mastering English language is really important. I am a STEM person, I'm an engineer, and so English doesn't matter just for English and reading. It's the basis of everything, right? So students in the top third reading skill answered 70% better on math and science questions, right? So they do 70% better on math and science exams than other students do. Students who get lots of high quality reading practice every day They suggest 15 to 30 minutes a day, depending on how old the student is, are twice as more likely to achieve college and readiness benchmarks than the typical students. So reading 15 to 30 minutes a day makes you twice as ready for college. It's really, really that simple. So I just wanted to share some of those statistics. And either you ladies, if you can talk about, Gwen, if you can talk about like your experience with teaching kids maybe essays, and why learn like the command of English and comprehension and basically writing and communication is important. To get these scholarships, they want to make sure you have a command of the English language and you can express, your story well. If you could maybe speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, a lot of students that I work with, many of them, I tell them, you've got to do better with your writing. And, for the most part, I encourage them to write it at least a few times. When I have my coaching classes, I edit, and then I have to go back and I have to educate them on some, proper language skills. And sometimes, they're a little short sighted with their knowledge on understanding how to really formulate their narratives, their introductory sentences and whatnot. One of the things I express with the parents, when I try to work with the parents first to kind of give them an orientation of how I'm going to work with their student. And I share with them that every summer, before they get to their 12th grade, if their student has a need for tutorial, whether it's math, science, or reading or writing, they should be taking advantage of summer school or any opportunities they have at, for reading, literacy programs at the library. And because especially in the African American communities, a lot of our students, they just don't have the skills they need. And I'm talking about a large majority of them. But then sometimes they can create wonderful stories. And then I can help them through the process of writing a great story. A lot of times they have not had anyone to work with them and just kind of hold their hand. And I tell them, I said, my example is my son. He was a pretty decent writer, but I pushed him even more. And, he would get a paperback, a scholarship essay draft back, and I would have red marks all over. And he was like, "You want me to write this again?" Yes. And it would normally take about 3 times, because what I told him is that it has to be exciting. I said, I have sat on some of these scholarship programs and had to read essays. And so I want something to jump out of the pages to me, as opposed to me falling asleep. And when I tell them that, I said, put everything you have, put some passion in it. And then, when you encourage them, they can do it. And they just need a little tutorial. And I tell the parents all the time, you've got to do this now, because otherwise your student will go to college and be in remedial classes, and you're paying for that remedial class. You might as well do, those classes now while they're free, or, any programs, before they go to college, to improve their writing. And I have a short story. One summer, I was trying to figure out what to do with my son. I don't believe in students not having anything to do for the summer. And so I said, "Son, what do you want to do for the summer?" And he says, well, the acting bug had hit him. And he says, "Mom, I want to act." So I said, if you want to act, well, son, you need to study Shakespeare. Now, in my mind, I'm saying that'll get him a chance to improve his writing and reading comprehension, reading Shakespeare. But, at the same time, I was being strategic. And so long story short, we found a program, and I thought the program was in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and it was in Cambridge, at Cambridge University. And over in Cambridge, United Kingdom. And it was so funny. I mean, he was able to get a scholarship, but it was wonderful. And that's when it was going into his 10th grade, he discovered literature. And so from that opportunity for him reading all summer long, now he's still today, he's a big reader. And so we just have to encourage our young people to continue to read. I was reading something the other day about students of color, and many of them are not encouraged to go to the library. Well, guess what? My son I made him get a job at the library. And so there he was around these books all the time. And so he ended up getting an award. I think it was in his freshman year in college. They went to look for him at college and said his job at the library in Michigan. They said, listen, because of you, he had a job. There was now this young African American male, this face at the library. So kids, other Black kids, could now identify with seeing him. There was somebody like him who was working at the library. So more students of color started coming to the library. And so they ended up getting a diversity award recognized by First Lady Michelle Obama, because they showed their literacy rates had improved. They had outreach at the library, and now this was once a majority library, and this was now a diversified library. So you would see kids of all shades and colors and backgrounds now studying at the library.
That's awesome. That's awesome. If we could bring it back, Kim.
Can't hear you.
Oh,
Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Okay.
Can't hear you.
Hold on one second.
Can't hear you.
Hold on one second. Okay, can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, Kim, you can hear me?
Yeah. I can't hear you.
Okay, Kim can hear me. Okay, yeah. So Kim, if we can bring it back, if you can share with the audience, okay, we're at home this summer and we might be at home during the school year. How can we make sure that our students are progressing in reading, especially our early readers?
I can't hear you.
How can we make sure that they're learning and meeting the benchmarks that they need to make?
I think especially for the young kids, you can make it fun. You can do a lot of multi-sensory things like writing and scan, that sort of thing. Shaping, cream, pudding. Try to make it fun. Do a lot of listening activities. Talk to them about what you're doing during the day. Lots of just talking and sharing that vocabulary. Just go into like a variety of settings, and when you go to different places, talk about it. And of course, play games, memory, like strategy type things. Read together, of course. But kids that are ready to have, I have to look at it, but let me see here. So, I really can't find it right now. All right. Struggling.
We lost her. Okay, let's see if we can get her to rejoin. Can you hear me, Gwen? Can you hear me? Weird.
Completely.
Lost you. Sorry.
There we
go. You left out if you were sharing about vocabulary exercises, I believe, and then we didn't hear you after that.
Well, just the more that kids are read to, the more vocabulary they have, the more words that they know and understand. And just when you go places, especially with the little ones, just describing what you're doing, talking about that, using that language. And even for the older kids, there are a lot of great websites and different things that they can use at home just to mix it up. I think, and what you were talking about, Gwen, find something that they're interested in, because that's going to encourage them to read more. It's like, instead of just here, read this, if the child likes to cook or whatever, act, find books on that topic so they're more likely to want to read. And then, even if they're in middle school, if there's a book that's maybe, kids can always they always have higher listening comprehension. And so if you read to them, it's still okay to read to a student who's in middle school and high school, because what tends to happen, is if they're not reading and they're already a poor reader, their reading gets worse, and good readers read more and they continue to improve. So, and if it's difficult, we want to build their stamina. So you read a page, they read a page, or you read a paragraph and model it for them, and then they follow with you. So just, I think, mix it up and try to do a lot of small sessions instead of one long session, because it's just, kids retain it better when you do several short sessions throughout the day and do that distributed practice, as opposed to let's sit down and work for an hour. And I like to mix it up for those reluctant kids and say, we're going to work for this amount of time, and then you get to do this. Then we're going to go back and do, spread it throughout the day.
Thank you. Yeah, those are some good strategies. Thank you for sharing those. I just want to ask both of you ladies, I wanted to ask this at the beginning, but what do you think your superpower is, like, in your work? What makes you stand out? Where do you shine in your work?
Gwen, me? You want me to go?
Either one.
I think my variety of experiences has, that I feel like I have a good tool bag of things that I can pull out, different things. I think I sometimes think outside of the box as far as ways to help kids. I think one of my strong suits is assessing a child, which doesn't mean sitting down and taking a test, but just as we're reading together, as we're working together, just always in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, what are they struggling with, and how am I going to focus on that? Not if they already know how to do something, don't waste time on that, but really hone in on those, missing skills or deficit skills, so that you can obviously bring them up. And I think relationships with kids, that's going to be the most important. If you have that relationship and and go ahead and talk to them about, if it's a child who has dyslexia and you think they're old enough, use the word, explain that, talk to them about mindset, growth mindset, and how the brain can change as they do this work and they work hard. They can actually create new pathways, and they can still learn, because a lot of the kids are defeated by the time they've hit 5th and 6th grade. And so I think, building that relationship so they're willing to try their best.
I think that's so important. You mentioned growth mindset, letting kids know they can do it, having them not be defeated, having them be in an environment where they are reinforced, especially if they're labeled like dyslexic or these other labels. They can start to feel like that's their identity, but knowing that that's something like they struggle with, but it's not their identity, is like really, really important. So that's really good. Gwen, so I just posed you the same question. I'm not sure if she can even hear me. Gwen, what would be your superpower? I don't think she can hear me. So I'm gonna try to remove her and see if she can join back. But it's just her until. Okay, so yeah, sorry about that. So hopefully she can join us. But I have more questions for you while we wait for her. But
Okay.
yeah, so you mentioned more about the vocabulary exercises and things like that. People ask me all the time, where do I find these exercises? Like, where do I strategize at? So that's one question. But the next thing, how do I know when a teacher or a tutor is a good fit for my student? How do I go about finding a teacher or tutor who's a good fit for my student?
Um, well, personally, I offer like a free assessment. And then, so like actually yesterday, I had 2 new kids that started. And so the parents stayed with and we worked. And then we immediately talked about what I saw and how I could help their child. So I think, that way they can see, do you click with the parent and with the child? And I would say give it a little bit of time. I mean, I don't think it's totally abnormal for the child to say, like, I don't really want to go tutor today because I'd rather go do something way more fun, just because, that's how kids can be. But, I've actually had some of my older students even say, oh, I'm really excited about what we've been doing in reading. Because I think when they feel successful, that at least makes them want to do it a little bit more. But if you feel that they're not clicking, look for someone else. There's a lot of them out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to touch on something you said, like when children are successful, they gain confidence. I have a lot of parents who I was just saying that when children feel successful, they're able to gain confidence. I have a lot of parents who expect a lot from their kids, but sometimes expect more than their ability level, right? So sometimes you can't like give them something too high or too hard. Like if they're in 6th grade and you're giving them high school geometry because you think your kid should be a geometry genius, but they're not doing well, pushing them harder won't necessarily make them be successful.
Right.
Sometimes parents have their kids in all honor classes and they're struggling and they bring me to
Yeah.
tutoring and I just tell them, I'm like, put them in a non-honors class and
Yeah.
these students thrive and they get straight A's. It's better to get an A in a non-honors class than get a D struggling in an honors class.
Correct.
The child has to be confident and be in their grade level to build that confidence so they can do well. And it's gonna look better on college exams. It doesn't matter what honors class they had if they didn't do well in them. But I think a lot of parents, I don't want to say a lot of the parents I work with, because I'm a test prep instructor. So these are parents who are very strict. They want their kid to be the next prodigy. But your kid can be prodigy in something. It doesn't mean like they're excellent in every single subject, and just pushing them will, you know, not do more harm than good. And Gwen, if you want to talk about that at all, I know that you pushed your child and your child was very good, but it seemed like you were also aware of what his strengths were and things like that. So how do you be a parent that like expects excellence but not like push your child over the edge and make sure that they're excelling um in what they're doing so they are attractive to colleges and they are able to form scholarships applications and form a good package for whatever college or scholarships they're going for?
There's a difference, in my opinion, between boys and girls. Um, Girl students sometimes will, be real focused if they're concerned with doing well. There's a lot of distractions today because of social media. But boys, sometimes, when their mom is pushing them, sometimes they don't listen right away. And because I knew the ability of my son, I knew he had it in him, but he was lazy. He was lazy, and they won't do it until they're really ready. And I started just, saying, hey, you've got to get prepared. You've got to get prepared. And then all of a sudden the bell went off. Ding, 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 ding. And I said, listen, you've got to get over that 3.0, because he was just like at a 2.9, very cavalier, didn't really want to do the work. And finally, about the second half of his 11th grade, he started getting serious. And then he came home that semester with like a 3.5 grade point average overall for that semester, which brought his grade point average over to a 3.1. And that was just in high school. And I knew he had the ability, but he just didn't want to do it. And so when he realized, I said, well, they're not even going to hardly count the 12th grade. And that's when he's like, what? And he got serious. So you have to know your kid. I tell parents, by the time a student gets in the 8th grade and the 9th grade, you kind of know if they're a good writer, if they're good in math. You know their skills. And so if their skills are going down, that's simply because there's something distracting them. They're not focused. And I tell families all the time, you have students who go into high school and now they think it's time to have a good time. You've got to continue to help them to stay focused, because it only takes 1 year to really kind of get them off track. And so I tell parents, start early, always have, updates about, what was the problem with this math class? Do I need to get you a tutor? You have families who wait to the last minute, 2 years pass and, they're still struggling in that math class or that science class. So parents know, and if they don't know, they need to hone in immediately, because there's no excuse. The other thing is, I get these students who, they get to the 12th grade and they are stressed out, because just what you said, because they're, taking all these AP classes, and so, don't want them to burn them out, because, when they get to college, some of them begin to have some challenges mentally because of the stress. So parents have to be very aware of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think a lot of not a lot of parents, but there are a group of parents who maybe their children are athletes or they're on cheerleading scholarships or something like that, and they come to me, and there's a group of parents that always says this: "Oh, they just so you know, my students don't know math, or they don't know this. The school didn't teach them anything." And this is what it says: teacher, the teacher, excuse me, the parent says, and I'm like, the school didn't teach them anything. They're in 11th grade and they don't know math, and you're just now saying the school didn't teach them anything. Like you said, you are in control of your children's education. You need to know where they're at. And it's not just about getting a tutor when your student is struggling. It's about getting a tutor before they start to struggle. As soon as you, like you said, as soon as you mention that slip, because I'm getting students and they've had 8 to 12 years of slip, and you want me to make up for that in 6 weeks.
Right.
I like, I can't do it. So it's
Right.
really, really important to make sure that we are like assessing where our kids at along the way, even if they're not slipping at all, getting them outside help and getting the academic help to make sure they're staying on track and noticing when they slip. Kim, if you can talk about, how do you notice when your kids slip? How do you know when your kid might need someone like you um, to help them along the way?
Um, I mean, as early as kindergarten and even before that, if parents will focus on like teaching them their letters and all of that, but they really need to know letter sounds even before the letter names. And if they're struggling with learning that kind of thing in kindergarten, that's a red flag. So, being able to like rhyme and manipulate the sounds and words, I mean, that's a red flag. And the sooner the better, because, I've had students who didn't get really like an IEP or much help until 5th grade. And then the parent says, oh, they struggled in kindergarten learning their letter names and sounds. And I'm just like, the sooner the better.
Right,
Like
right.
you said,
As soon as you learn that
yeah,
they're slipping.
it's
Yeah,
so hard to make up that ground,
yeah,
you know.
absolutely.
And just even like I have a little one right now that's struggling with learning, well, they're high frequency words, and so
Hmm.
that's, that could be a lot working memory issue. So, just giving lots of repetitions. But I mean, you will notice some of those things early on, and that's a red flag. So yeah, as soon as you can. And as soon as a teacher's telling you, they should be here, but they're here, I would say jump on it and find someone to help.
Okay.
Brought up a good
Go ahead.
You brought up a good point about athletes.
Hmm.
You know, some things are going to really change in the coming years with athletes because these colleges are losing millions of dollars. And so you're going to see some of the programs fold,
Yeah.
maybe some of the Division twos. And so you've had some students who just knew that they were going to get a athletic scholarship to pay for their college, and that student is slipping. They're right on the border of pass or fail, or let's just say they may not meet the NCAA requirements. And so that's when they're running to try to find a tutor. And so if these students are not preparing themselves now, they may not be eligible to to get into a Division 1 school. They may get into a Division 2 school, and then they're looking at not having a full ride,
Right.
but only having a partial scholarship. So I was talking about that with somebody the other day, that these athletes and these coaches, they need to be mindful that there may extend the eligibility for some of these scholarships and some of these students to go to college by 1 year because of COVID. But I'm telling you, we're going to see the effects of the COVID in those departments and in those athletic programs diminish. Some of those programs are going to fold. They're going to have to cut back on some of those, and so they can't compete. And so, of course, the dollars are sometimes made as a result of advertisers and donations and things like that. So it's going to be a big change in sports and athletics over the next year or two.
Yeah, I hear that Division 1 is losing billions
Yeah.
last year and this year because of not having athletics, and like you said, everything related to athletics, and that's partially where they get their money to
Mm-hmm.
be able to give to the athletes, and it's
Mm-hmm.
where a lot of schools are funding other research programs based off the sports dollars. So
Yeah.
colleges are definitely more hard pressed with money, and a lot of colleges and athletic programs are folding. So getting into athletics is going to be a lot more challenging. Getting to athletic program is going to be a lot more competitive than it has been
Mm-hmm.
in the past. So
Mm-hmm.
students can't rely on what they thought they could rely on before. That
Yeah.
is definitely true.
Mm-hmm.
On the upside, some good news I've heard is that um, unfortunately, it seems like students are applying to college, like top colleges, less. Students are not wanting to go to top colleges. It kind of makes sense because they're like, I don't want to pay $100,000 to take classes virtually.
Right.
So, but these top 10 colleges are less competitive right now. Um, it's easy, fewer students are applying, so their chances of getting in are better.
Yeah.
Um,
The,
but,
the
but
the numbers are low. The numbers are very low right now, and school starts in less than a month.
right, yeah. So it's time to shoot your shot. Shoot your shot and apply for college. So these schools, they are lower on dollars, but also fewer people are applying. So it's definitely time right now to shoot your shot wherever your dream school, whoever is listening to this. If you think you can go and get the money to go, definitely do it. I want to talk a little bit more about um, creating a plan for your kid. Um, and helping that plan, like you said, being directed by the child's interests. So both of you, but Gwen, I would like you to start. So how do you start to create a plan for your kid? How do you make sure, especially junior high and high schoolers, that they are packaged well to go to college? Like, how do you start to create a plan for your kid?
Well, you have to start having conversations, and you have to kind of monitor what your child is interested in. So, you have for example, I hear a lot of parents who have children who are very creative and they're artists and the work is beautiful, or, they're very musically inclined. And, you might have them push them towards science. But first, let's look at what this child's gift is. And so you have to get into their head, as opposed to this is this what you want to do. Then you begin to expose them, give them an orientation to that field, because a lot of times a child might have it in their mind, I'm an artist, but I may not be able to make a living from this. Well, if they haven't had an orientation to fine art, or they haven't visited the museum or seen anyone who looks like them with that gift and that art. And so I always tell students and families, when a student has an interest in a particular area, help them to research a black girl. If it's a black girl who's done this before. Where did they go to school? Did they have a showcase? Learn as much about them as possible. And if not, who else? Is there an Asian girl? Is there a white girl? Whatever. Find it out. Women in the arts. And so I tell families to do that. And then sometimes, because in college, even college, not even high school, but both high school and college, sometimes they're not teaching 21st century careers.
Yeah.
If you go through a catalog of a college and you look at the majors that they're offering, you're saying, okay, some of these can, they can delete some of these majors, and that's going to happen real soon.
Yeah.
Because, and I use psychology, for example, now because of COVID, and now psychology may rise up again. Well, for a few years, I would tell students, I said, let's do the math. If you think in terms of how many psychology how many colleges offer psychology as a major, and let's say in the state of Michigan, there are 30 colleges who do, and they graduate 50 students every year. And then over a course of 4 years, how many psychologist degrees are there out there? And those people don't have jobs. So I try to educate students about the Department of Labor and who forecast where the jobs are. If we want to find out what a student should go into, where the needs are in the workplace, we need to go to the Department of Labor. And we have those conversations in our workshop. And we normally work with the Society of Human Resources, who will talk about the projections of where the jobs are in the next 5 or 10 years. Because we want our students, when they make that investment, we want to make sure that they make that investment able to get a job. So when you sit down and plan with your student, you want to find out, what they're interested in. And so if they say, well, Mom, I'm interested in art, then you say, well, let's go find out about 21st centuries where they need art. Oh, okay, son, let's look at animation. Oh, let's look at, well, Oakland University has a new video program and they need animators, or whatever the case may be. You find out where the new jobs are. Years ago, students, they never had the orientation of advertising agencies. I'm going back 25 years ago. So an artist never knew that there was an opportunity for him to be a creative director at an ad agency and things like that, or things like that. So that's the main thing. Sit down and talk to them about the kinds of careers. Call up a company and say, hey, I'm a high school student. Can I come and visit your facility? They won't know unless they shadow a person, unless they talk to individuals, unless they read about it and research and find out how much money they make. And some people want to know the glitz and the glamour. Find out all that stuff before they make a decision and decide on what college to go to. because the worst thing in the world is to have a student go into a field where their mother wants them to go into and they're not happy. And then they've wasted thousands of dollars. And then midstream, they decide to go after what they're really interested in.
Right. I love it. You got to mirror your passion with what's going to make you money.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're going to go get the degree. Like I
Mm-hmm.
tell my little cousin, she wants to be a hairstylist. I'm like, okay, so you're going to go to cosmetology school. That's fine. But we're also going to get a business degree, because when you are a cosmetologist, a lot
Yes.
of cosmetologists I know, they
A
fail
terrible
because,
business.
right, terrible business skills. So you're going to get a business degree so you can run and be profitable. Right. So that's what we're going
Mm-hmm.
to do. A lot of my kids, they like games, they like Minecraft. They're so into Minecraft. Okay, Minecraft teaches you coding. Did you know that people who build the games are web developers or web designers? They know coding, so things like that. So putting that together, that's so very important. Um, Kim, I want to ask you the same question. Like, how do we put a plan together for our kids? How do we start putting a plan together for our kids so we make sure that they're progressing academically?
Um, I think sometimes it's a little tougher in the school setting just
Mhm.
because either as a special ed teacher, what I found was instead of jumping on getting them into my classroom right away, where maybe we could get them caught up and move them back out, it was second grade, it was third grade. And like you said earlier, okay, now fix them in 6 months. Well, I have a lot of ground to cover that you can't do it. So what I've seen in my area a lot is making sure that the schools are putting like a really good phonics program in, and they're getting it in the core classroom, not just in special ed, because that's going to keep a lot of kids out of needing extra help, and I had a child who I had to really stay on top of, and it's a lot of work, but you've got to stay on top of what's going on in school because, you know, you just, a lot of times, your child might have a 504 or an IEP, and is it always getting followed? You really have to become knowledgeable, I think, and follow that along, because it does get harder in middle school and high school because you're not dealing with one or two teachers, you're dealing with 5, 6, 7. But then going off of what Glenn said, finding that thing that they love, and especially for these kids who struggle. I mean, I have one student that I always am reminding his parents, yes, he struggles in math, reading, and writing, but he's so creative and he's got such an imagination. And if he can't write it all down, let him record it, text to speech, speech to text, other way around. But, find those accommodations. There's so much technology that what's inside, they can get that out in another way if they can't sit and write it down. So just being aware and, making sure that if your child has an IEP, getting that on there. And
Yeah. I think it's very important that you kind of touched on, but like getting to know your kids' teachers, getting to know what the teachers expect. And if your child has an IEP or plan, okay, a lot of parents just be like, they have an IEP or plan. What is the plan?
yeah.
Like, are you guys following the plan? Is the plan being followed? So that's very important. We're kind
well, sorry. Well, I just feel like sometimes, the parent trusts that the teacher is going to do what the plan says, and that's not always the case. So that's just another reason to stay aware.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good point. Yeah, like I always tell teachers, I mean parents, teachers are another vehicle to guide your kids' education. It's your job to make sure that they are being educated, whether that's hiring a teacher, building relationships with the teachers, like whatever you need to do. But it's your job to make sure they're being educated. You can't leave that 100% on the teachers and then blame them when something didn't happen.
Yes, they do.
Yes, yeah. So we're getting close to closing out, but if ladies have final words and where we can find you at. Thank you so much for this conversation. I think it was very important. Um, Finding a plan to make sure our kids are progressing. Make sure that when they get to high school, that they're college and career ready. think this is very, very important, and making sure that we're staying on top of our kids and taking ownership of our kids' education. So, if you can, Gwen, if you could go first, let us know where we can find you and any closing words. Oh,
No.
High school students and middle school students, I challenge them to have a conversation with them, at the dinner table on Sundays every day, every Sunday, I mean, every week, and talk about the challenges that they may have in school or something they're excited about, because families are busy. Sometimes families are passing in the night and they don't have the time. But make it a point once a week to sit down and find out what they can do to help them get college ready, and create a plan and write it in a journal, and then check it off when that accomplishment is completed. So families and students can reach me at freshperspectivesseminars.org. That's Fresh Perspectives with an S, and then seminars with an S.org. My telephone number is 609-474-4877. The best email is Gwen, Gwen, at freshperspectivesseminars.org.
thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. You have an amazing story, and really honored for you to share with us. And Kim, any final words, and where can we find you?
If anyone feels that their child needs help, I will tutor ages kindergarten or even younger if necessary, on up through adult. You can reach me at a2zreadingtutor.com or a2zreadingtutor@gmail.com. It's my email. So,
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, ladies. Thank you again. I will have their contact information for everyone who needs it, and I will email it out. So thank you for joining us, and I will speak to you soon.
thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.